Hello everyone, and happy Amtrak Day! Unfortunately, the video I was preparing for Amtrak Day is still under construction due to work and finals. So, today I thought we would do a fun little Wikipedia deep dive into very obscure Amtrak trains that you probably didn't know exist. Here are 5 of them. Number 1. Metroliner, from Downingtown. Named after the famed Bud train sets of the same name, Metroliner was Amtrak's premier passenger service on the Northeast Corridor until 2006. There were several variants of the service over the years, connecting places from Washington, D.C. to New Haven, but one truly weird variant emerged between October of 1989 and October of 1991. An express Metroliner service would begin in Downingtown, Pennsylvania on the Keystone Corridor and travel all the way down to Washington, D.C. This would only run once a day and only southbound, stopping in Malvern, Paoli, Ardmore, 30th Street Station, Wilmington, and Baltimore. According to a 1990 brochure, the service existed so that residents of suburban Philadelphia could make 9 o'clock meetings in the nation's capital. For the return trip, you could make connections to the surrounding suburbs once you reached 30th Street Station. It's not surprising why this one didn't last long. Number 2. The InterAmerican, from Fort Worth to Laredo. While no Amtrak trains ever traveled straight into Mexico, the InterAmerican perhaps came the closest, with service between Fort Worth and Laredo, Texas, starting in 1973. At Laredo, passengers could cross the border into Nuevo Laredo and ride Ferrocarriles Nacionales de Mexico services to point south. On the American side, the InterAmerican was gradually extended from Fort Worth to Chicago via St. Louis, and it was the last train to service St. Louis Union Station in 1981. Number 3. The Niagara Rainbow, from New York to Detroit. Going from the southern border to the northern one, we find the Niagara Rainbow. This train used the Empire Corridor up through Niagara Falls, akin to today's Maple Leaf. But it turned westward once in Canada, traveling through Ontario to Windsor, where it crossed back into America and terminated in Detroit. Inaugurated in 1974, the service ended in 1979 after Michigan and New York withdrew their support for the service. As far as I can tell, this is one of, if not the only examples of an Amtrak train that crossed the Canadian border twice. Number 4. The Niagara Rainbow, from New York to Toronto. The Niagara Rainbow resurfaced 15 years later in June 1994, this time as a once-weekly overnight train to Toronto. Trains would leave New York on Friday night and arrive in Toronto on Saturday morning, with return trains leaving Sunday night and arriving Monday morning. For some reason, it doesn't appear that there were trains in the reverse direction for Toronto residents who wished to spend a weekend in New York. The second iteration of the Rainbow lasted a little over a year before ending its run in September 1995. Number 5. The entire Northeast Corridor. Yeah, that's right. Prior to 1995, there was no unified brand for Northeast Corridor services. Instead, trains up and down the Northeast Corridor were given different names based on when they left, where they stopped, and how far they traveled. Your train between Washington and New York might have been named the Capitol, the Embassy, the President, the Bowery, the Betsy Ross, or any number of other things, despite using roughly the same route and equipment. This was a tradition carried over from previous railroads, and one that seems to be a largely forgotten chapter of Amtrak history. 1995 saw the introduction of the Northeast Direct brand, which unified regional services under a single name. This would eventually be swapped out with the Acela Regional, the Regional, and finally the Northeast Regional. But if you ever go to Wikipedia, take a moment to enjoy the long list of train names that used to roam the Northeast Corridor. In fact, it's such a long list that I feel like it could make a good song. Springfield Bankers, that was great, the same route had the Nutmeg State. New Yorkers rode on the Wall Street, and Fast Mail had just one Amfleet. Richmond gets the... But more of that in Thursday's video. Hope you all have a great Amtrak day, and don't forget to take the train. Take care.